Hey, Steve Zelenardi here at Treviso Realty. We have another fun event today. Right now we're at the Edison and Ford's Winter Estates. So right behind me, obviously, this is Thomas Edison. And yeah, we're gonna do a tour today, kind of show you what this is all about. Clearly, these were the most wealthiest people in the world, the most influential people in the world at the time, and they resided in Fort Myers half the year. So who would come down would be obviously Henry Ford, Thomas Edison, Harvey Firestone. We had obviously Ambrose McGregor, which was a huge component into building up Fort Myers. He was tied to Standard Oil, the Rockefellers. And today we're lucky enough to have a guided tour with Alex. So we're going to introduce Alex very shortly, and then we're going to go through the estate. Introduce yourself and what do you do for the Edison Museum?
I'm the marketing and public relations coordinator here at the Estates. I've been here for 8 years. I started off as a site historian giving tours of the site, and now I help coordinate any media visits, bloggers, journalists who come to the site. I also help manage some of our social media pages, and I promote our events here at the Estates. So there's definitely always something going on throughout the year that visitors can tune into.
Awesome. So what do you got in plan for us today?
So we're going to just basically show you around the site all that there is to see. We offer guided and self-guided tours throughout the day as part of our daily programs. And then we do have some special events that go on as well. We are in our slow season, so we don't have as many events going on, but it's still a great time to tour. There's not as many people in the area.
Probably the best time to tour.
It really is. It's a really peaceful atmosphere, especially since it's a slower time of the year, so you can kind of really take in everything that there is here. I definitely recommend at least 2 hours to see the entire site. Yeah, so at this point, we've entered what I call the west side of the property, or really the riverside. So this is really kind of the residential area. Across the street, that was really like Edison's research gardens. So he had his laboratory. He had a lot of different buildings as well. So he had a barn over there. He had a shed, different buildings for storage areas. And he had basically a rack where he would, like a plant propagating area where he would lay out plants to dry when he was doing the rubber research. A lot of this was his residential because he did separate his work from his family life. Edison really valued that. When he was working, and then when he had time with his family, that was time there. So we'll go ahead and kind of see the rest of it here. So this portion of the property is about 13.5 acres. It was originally owned by a wealthy cattleman. I did mention that Fort Myers did have a rich history as a backwater cattle town. So one wealthy cattle baron, his name was Samuel Summerlin. That's who Summerlin Road is named after today. He owned this 13.5 acres of land here right off the Caloosahatchee River. And Edison, as I mentioned, he traveled down further south even after reaching North Florida and St. Augustine to enjoy even more warmer temperatures and really kind of get away from the public eye. Well, traveling at that time was very cumbersome. The whole journey that it took from Edison to get from New Jersey all the way to Fort Myers initially was about 2.5 weeks because they took a train all the way to northern Florida, ended up in St. Augustine, and then some of those railroads were relatively underdeveloped at the time because the railroad didn't actually reach Fort Myers until 1904. Edison arrived here in 1885. So they traveled by railroad from St. Augustine, even further south towards Cedar Key, which is just a little bit north of Tampa. And then from Cedar Key, they had to take a boat down to Punta Rassa. But as they were going down the railroad, it was actually broken and some of the ties were rotten in areas. So they actually ran off the track a few times. Wow. Edison was a telegrapher, so he had telegraph equipment where he could kind of go and fix the lines and get contact with some of the railroad stations. But eventually they did make their way down here. When they reached Southwest Florida, they came to Sanibel first upon the port of Punta Rassa. And they met a hotel proprietor who had kind of a form of a hotel. He turned the army barracks there back when the Spanish Wars were going on here. So he turned that army barracks into a hotel. So Edison and Gilland stopped at that hotel. They stayed there. The next morning, Edison would sit with Gilland. Sorry, not Gilland. That was his best friend he traveled with. But he would sit with Schultz on the veranda, and they'd be smoking cigars. And they were looking out towards the Caloosahatchee River. And Edison noticed these boats going down the river. So he inquired to Schultz as to where the boats were going. And he said, oh, they're going upriver to a small town known as Fort Myers.
Oh, wow.
So Edison was inspired by this. He was intrigued. He wanted to explore it and check it out, since Fort Myers was relatively untapped land at that time. It had just been established as a county right before Edison arrived here. So he hired another sloop, which was a term for a fishing boat. And he and his best friend Gilland, that he traveled with, they traveled down this river, and they went to downtown Fort Myers. They explored the area, kind of got a feel for what the town was. They said the cows were freely roaming up and down the streets. There was like 3 general stores, about 50 wooden residential homes and places to go. So he ended up going into a realtor's office. They pulled up this property for sale, and
Oh, wow.
Edison later decided to purchase it within 24 hours of arriving here.
Oh, wow.
He was sold on the 600 feet of riverfront access that the property offered.
Probably the price too.
Yeah, well, the price,
Was it pricey then?
the price seems like it would have been a good deal. However, it really wasn't. He ended up negotiating a deal to buy the 13.5 acres of land for $2,750. Now, most people would be like, wow, that's a great deal, especially with today's prices. But land like this for locals, typically they'd pay between $15 to $25 an acre.
Okay.
Edison was
Dollars.
charged, yes,
Dollars.
$15 to $25 per acre. Edison was charged almost $200 per acre for the land. So he
Did you
was
see him coming and they said this guy's got money?
well, I think they knew that he was coming from up north.
Yeah.
And Edison was 38 years old at the time, well-established inventor with 500 United States patents to his name. So he definitely had created a name for himself. So he was starting to get the attention of the press. So I don't know how familiar people here would have been with Edison, but he was starting to become very well known.
Sure.
So I'm sure that they kind of thought
They
about
juiced him a
that.
bit. It's all good.
Yeah, a little bit. So with that price, some historians would make the comment that he got or received the Yankee discount. But he still found a lot of value in the property. Along the river, there is a stretch of bamboo. Edison actually used bamboo as a filament in his light bulb. So Edison saw a lot of that bamboo because he can continue his light bulb experiments. So along with the homes that he had built here, he also had an electrical lab built next to the homes in 1886 as well, where he experimented with more light bulb equipment. But with bamboo, he was able to create the first practical light bulb that burned for more than just a couple seconds or
Here at Fort
13.
Myers?
Yeah, well, he actually developed the light bulb in New Jersey, but he continued research down here.
And that concludes the day here at Fort Edison Winter Estates. Thank you. Big shout out to Alex Edwards. Amazing tour. She's got such an in-depth knowledge of the entire site. She's an 8th generation Floridian, and she's been working at this community and this facility for the last 8 years. She knows this like the back of her hand. Have a watch, give her a follow, come out to the Edison Museum. In favor of, obviously, for this nice private tour, we bought some tickets in advance. So if you want to come out here for free, we're going to provide you tickets. Come out, check it out. Just remember, like, the most wealthiest, the most influential people in the world at that time lived here, in the winter months. So there's a reason why they came out here, and we found out. And the real reason was because Edison was living in St. Augustine, which was too cold in the winter, so he traveled further south like we did into Southwest Florida and found favorable weather, so he's stationed here. Well, we'll get you on the next one.